Ladies and gentlemen, I take pride in introducing the greatest show on earth.
Hi, everybody. This is Scott Gordon welcoming you to the Uncle Floyd podcast number 25. I didn't get a chance to stop in and see Floyd this week, so we're going to do something a little different this week. All right, I had some surgery on my foot, and I couldn't get in there, so I set something up a little bit different for you. And we're going to get into it at any moment now. I just wanted to remind you, if you want to send a question in to have Floyd and I answer, just send it to ufpodcast@sge-inc.com. That's ufpodcast@sge-inc.com. And we'll answer it for you when I get back to see him. But right now, I got something a little different. I want you to listen to this for a second and see if you see who my special guest is. Welcome, if you will, Looney Skip Rooney.
Oh, Scott. Yeah, I tell you, boy, that brings back so many memories. And you know, there's a story behind that. When we did that Mr. Oh Yeah recording, Floyd and I were in the studio. I think we recorded that in Totowa, studio in Totowa, I think.
That's the basement of Bioya Studios.
Was that in Totowa? I think.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah. And so Floyd was standing right next to me. He was in the studio with me, and they actually had a music stand there. And the only thing I had to do was, oh, yeah, but they had the music stand there anyway, in case they forget to say, oh, yeah. So Floyd had a Flair pen, and he would, you know, the music would be playing, and he'd be going with the Flair pen in time to the music. And then when I hit the cue, then I would do it, oh, yeah, like that. So it was really funny. And I was coming down with a bad cold. As a matter of fact, I called Floyd that afternoon and said, look, man, I'm not even going on the air today. I was doing a radio show then at WRAN in Dover, Cousin Brucey station.
Right.
And I took the day off because I knew I was coming down with a heck of a cold. And Floyd says, oh, we got the recording studio tonight. You know, you got to come in and do this. I said, okay, fine. Being the pro that I am, of course. So we get there, and sure enough, I was able to get through it without any mucus getting in the throat or anything like that. And the next day, I was like really sick. So I came down with a cold, but I did it. Went to the studio with Floyd, and you know we did it, and it came out fine. And but I was a pretty sick guy there for a couple of days after we did that. But that was so funny. Everybody was directing me on that for only two words. Oh yeah. But Floyd was going with the Flair pen, and they were giving me cues and this and that. But I remember the night that we recorded that. That was a lot of fun doing that.
Well,
you know?
You said more than oh yeah. A couple of times you said that's nice.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I haven't heard that record in years. I haven't heard that, but I have a copy of it. It's upstairs. And when I made the move, everything is still in boxes. But yeah, it was it did okay. And there's actually a couple of radio stations. I think there's one in Pennsylvania. I'm not sure that lifted the oh yeah off the track, and they used it as a station promotion. So.
Well, I got a little hint for you. After moving boxes and stuff like that, Diana and I moved into this house in 1989. There's still about 3 boxes I haven't opened yet.
This is a true story. You know, I finally got married, and Allison and I, we bought a home in Boonton. We live in this house in Boonton now. And I had an apartment in Roselle Park. I was in there for over 40 years in that apartment. That goes to show you, how I hated to move. And so I still have 2. This is true. I still have 2 boxes from the apartment in the trunk of the car. And I've been here now about 4. Yeah, true. I've been here about 4.5, 5 years. Just too damn lazy to pull the seat down and pull the box out and then bring it in the house. There you go.
Oh, well, Boone, you and I are closer now than we ever were. We should get together for coffee sometime or something.
I'd love to see you. You know that. I'd love to see you. And, we can, reminisce about the show, which is, of course, my favorite subject. But I'm living in North Jersey now. We got a home here in Boonton. And it's, I'm not going to knock the town of Boonton. I'm not going to knock the town, but my favorite thing to do here in Boonton is sit around and watch the cars rust.
Right.
That's
Plus, you got a good Mexican restaurant too.
Yeah, that's my new hobby now. No, I'm a Union County kid. I lived in Union County for many years, and my last home was in Roselle Park. I think a lot of the fans remember that. And but I'm up here now in North Jersey, and I'm getting used to it. Getting used to it.
Before Union County, you were in Florida, right?
Yes, I did radio down there for 8 years, South Florida, mostly West Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale. And Florida, professionally, was very good to me. I worked at a lot of stations down there. I did the Looney Rooney character on Bozo the Clown down there. So Florida was very good to me, and my relatives were still alive. Of course, they're all gone now. But, Florida was very good. And then I came back up to New Jersey in 1975 because there was a radio station, it was a local Union County station, WJDM. They were looking for a morning... Huh? Oh, I thought I missed what you were saying.
No, I said right. I was agreeing with WJDM.
Yeah, and I did mornings there for 5 years. But even when I was doing Looney Rooney on the Floyd Show, I still did radio. I was always on the radio someplace. When I did the character, and the character. Yes.
A lot of people didn't realize that all of us had other jobs. We weren't just on the Uncle Floyd Show.
That's right. We did.
We were. We were all over the place. I think the only one who was a full-time performer was Floyd.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. He was. But he did radio too. He's still doing radio. But everybody on the cast, I think, was doing radio. All of us on the cast had. I know you did, and even though we did the television show and it became very popular, thank God, everybody came in contact with radio. Everybody on the cast had a radio gig at some point, but I did it full time.
Well, Floyd's major job with the Uncle Floyd Show, believe it or not, most people don't realize it, that we never got paid for doing that show except for New Jersey Network and for some time during the syndication. Yeah. Everything else was Floyd had to go out, sell ads to buy the time. Yes. Buy the time as air brokering. I don't know if they still do that. Well, now they do podcasts, which is the same thing. You sell ads for your own podcast, but
I see. Yeah.
That's the way that works. And
I remember when I think we were still at 68. We were still doing the shows for Channel 68, I remember. And I remember we got paid. I remember Floyd gave everybody $50 a week. I remember that. That's when and then it went to 100. Yeah, I remember that quite well. And you think he was very proud of that because he could finally, give the cast get some money.
There was finally enough money coming in. That's what it was.
That's right. Yeah, but that was. I remember that. It was like we were making $1,000 a week. But that was quite funny when he started giving us some money for coming down and doing the show. But and I'm sure you feel this way too. I mean, we did the show out of love. We really did.
Oh.
And I think everybody on the cast, including yourself, we all wanted it to go someplace. Channel 68 was fine. The personal appearances were fine. But I think everybody was, aiming for that syndication deal that we got. At least that was my goal. Tried so hard to, get people to watch the show. And we had so many supporters, as you remember, especially the DJs at WNEW-FM. I mean, they were great.
They treated us well. They really did.
They treated us like royalty. And I remember Floyd was on the morning show with Dave Herman. And I remember they called me. I was still asleep. This was like 7:30 in the morning, and Dave Herman called me and wanted to know, well, what are my favorite records? What are my favorite artists? I don't know whether you remember him doing that, but he did that with a lot of people. He did it with Floyd. He did it with me. And they promoted the show like crazy, and very grateful to them. They put and the Ramones too, of course. You can't forget the Ramones.
Yeah.
But NEWFM, they were a great supporter. They really were. Yeah.
I had more fun going over there and spending several nights with Vince Scelsa doing the all-nighter.
Vince Scelsa, yes, of course. You know, we worked at NEWFM, he lived in this town. He lived in Booton. I don't know how he stood it, but but he lived in Booton, North Jersey. Yeah. So. Well,
he eventually moved to Verona.
Yeah. Oh, Ben was a great guy. He was big supporter of the show, and he would come down and watch the tapings. And sometimes he didn't even get on camera, but he just came down to enjoy himself. Yeah, he was another great supporter of the show. We had many. We had many. Yep.
We did a couple of sketches with him called NTV. We were making fun of MTV.
I remember, sure.
And he did some really interesting stuff there.
Yes, yeah. I don't know where he is now. Maybe you know. I don't.
Oh, he's still here. He's still here in Jersey. He's still living in. Oh. I think he's still living in Verona.
Okay.
But he does a podcast. I'm not sure the name of it. I think it's Idiot's Delight. I think he's doing an Idiot's Delight podcast.
Okay. All right. I guess that's it. I guess that's dedicated to the Biden administration, huh? There you go. But are we supposed to get political on this?
Nah, we try not to.
Okay.
My opinion is it's dedicated to all politicians.
Well, that's even better. That's a better ad lib than I had, and I even wrote it down. But we had so many supporters over the years. It was great. Yeah.
So tell me, how's Gladys doing?
Oh, Gladys, I had to divorce her so I could marry Allison.
Why? What did Gladys do?
Oh, she wasn't very happy. She wanted to have. She filed for divorce.
Did she?
But I had a very clever lawyer, and what happened was I got her on a murder rap, for a speeding ticket. So he was a very good lawyer, very good lawyer, very good lawyer. Oh my God! Oh man, wait a minute. Here's the address so you can join the fun. The Uncle Floyd Show, Channel 68, West Orange. Remember that?
That's right.
I would do the gag with Floyd, and I would make my exit, and they'd play the stinger like you just did, and then Floyd would do here's the address so you can join the fun. I remember that so well. Yep.
Oh, we had a lot of fun doing that show.
We had a lot of fun doing that show, and I was thinking about that this morning because I know I was going to be recording this with you today. But some of the crazy things that went down, and like I told you before, Scott, we all worked for the show, even though it was Floyd's show, and we all respected that. And Floyd was a great guy to work for, because as long as you knew what you had to do, right, and you got the material together and did what he wanted, you had no problems, And I knew what he wanted from me. And I had to do five gags a week with him.
Right.
The pictures on the wall. And then, of course, we had Hula Hannah. Yes! We had Hula Hannah. And then we had Looney Skip Rooney's businesses. The phones are always ringing. So I knew what he wanted. And, or he would call me, especially when he was doing Eddie Slavo. He needed 3 or 4 pies. And
nobody made a better throwing pie than you did. I swear.
Well, I learned from the master. Wait a minute, somebody's here to say hello. That's right, doggy. I'm talking about Soupy Sales right here. Of course, if you're a Soupy fan, you know that was Clyde Adler's White Fang. But anyway,
and Frank Nastasi. Frank Nastasi when he was in New York.
God bless Frank. Frank was, without doubt, the nicest guy you ever met. And I would go over there, and would have dinner with him and his wife when Ruthie was still alive. And he was the nicest guy in the world. And whatever question you asked, you got an answer. We asked about everything. And so many times I'd be having dinner with him, and people, even though he wasn't doing the show anymore, people would come up to him. Are you Frank Nastasi from Soupy Sales? And he was really nice. Hey, how many times did he do the show? 2 or 3 times, didn't he? Something like that.
Well, just last week on the This Was the Uncle Floyd Show, the live stream that Floyd and I started during COVID, which I still keep going because he's laid up after having a stroke.
I know that's a horrible thing. He's in my prayers every day, and I went to see him about 3 times last summer. And it was great. It was great. We just, he was his mind has not been affected. He
not
can
at all.
Still reminisce. Yeah. No, his mind is still perfect. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead. You were talking about Frank Nastasi. Yeah.
Well, I just ran a show. There was every year used to go down to Florida for a week.
Oh, that's right.
And
that's right.
One of the weeks during New Jersey Network, while you were down in Florida, Frank came on and did 3 sketches with us on one show.
Oh, yeah.
I showed that show last week.
Good.
On This Was the Uncle Floyd Show. I keep that going because it's a nice little cash flow for Floyd while he's laid up.
I understand. I understand.
Everything after the cost of doing that goes right to Floyd. I send it to his son.
Good. That's a good thing. Well, I have a story about Frank Nastasi. He came down and did the show, of course, with me, and I came up with this bit, the Need for Greed game. Now, I did it with Floyd, and but we had Frank Nastasi coming down, so I wanted to be in a sketch with Frank, or a bit rather, and I remember I made up all these cue cards, that he would be able to follow it. So we could do the bit, because and the fans know, we never rehearsed it. I mean, we had 5 shows to do. We did 3 on Monday night, we did 2 on Tuesday night, so you didn't have time to go over it. I mean, we all went over what we had to do with Floyd, and he picked it up right away. But Frank, so he says, I don't need this, and he takes the cue cards. I've got the cue cards sitting on the piano, right, Floyd's piano, and we got the thing all set up to do. And he said, I don't need this. And he just pushes the cue cards off the piano. And I said, Frank, you sure? Oh, no, leave it. Let's just do it. Well, you see, he was in the same boat with Soupy. They never rehearsed. They had to do, 5 hours of live TV a week, so rehearsal was out. And they just did the show like we did ours.
No, it costs money for the technicians, costs money for the studio time. If you're rehearsing in the studio, it costs money.
That's right. It's all dollars and cents. That's right. And so I told him about it. He said, I got it. I said, well, here goes nothing. And it came off perfect. Maybe you remember it. I had him drinking bottles of gin.
I got it on tape.
You got it on tape, yeah. And the question was at the end, what is your name? And he couldn't think of it.
Couldn't remember his name.
Yeah, couldn't remember his name. But Frank was a kind of a guy performer that he worked 1,000%. I mean, regardless of what you did, and he was great on the Soupy Sales show. And as you know, I'm an expert on Soupy. He became a good friend towards the end, and he was a fan of ours, definitely. And it was like the only thing I objected to was Frank doing the dogs. I don't think he did the dogs as well as Clyde. Clyde had that rough voice. I mean, he could when he did White Fang.
Right.
He could really growl, in Black Tooth. Well, why don't you be like White Man and be good for nothing? Yeah. But Frank was a worker. I mean, the people at the door. Oh my God, who will ever forget that?
Well,
Pookie and Pookie.
I had a talk with Frank once. I was sitting down talking to Frank one day, and. Yeah. Did you know that he was a trained Shakespearean actor?
Yes, he was.
He studied Shakespeare.
Yes, he was a fine dramatic actor, and as a matter of fact, I went to see him. He was appearing in a play, and I can't tell you Oh, I know what it was. It was, oh, God. What was that movie that Walter Matthau and George Burns did? Sunshine Boys.
Yeah,
They're getting old, Scott. I forgot. The Sunshine Boys. And I saw him. This was, and just a tremendous actor.
Which one was he?
I don't remember. I don't remember. But he was fine in it, and that was the first time I had seen him outside of the Soupy Show in an acting. But he had done other things. He did. Nobody's going to remember this, but right after the Soupy Show went off in September of 1966, he did the commercial, "The 7 Warnings of Cancer."
Right.
And he's walking along. Yeah, he did that. He didn't have a line, but all of a sudden he stops and he reads, the 7 Warnings of Cancer. And then I saw him. Then he did that syndicated show, Madhouse Brigade, which was carried on PIX for about a year, something like that.
He also did several guest shots on the soap operas that were produced in New York.
One I remember, he played Emmanuel the gardener on All My Children, which is no longer on. But yeah, he was on that. So,
now let's get into some Skip Rooney history here.
All right, let's talk about him. He was a pretty funny guy. I remember him.
What the heck ever got him into show business?
Whatever got me into show business?
Yeah.
Hey, same as you. I didn't want to work for a living. It was like...
No, seriously. What was the point where all of a sudden you said, I got to get in front of people?
Okay, well, it's a very simple story, and I remember it well because back when I was born, I'm going to be 78 on May the 18th. Old guy, but
we're both old.
Yeah, I remember watching with my parents on a Saturday night all the great comedians. Scott, you remember that? Jackie Gleason, Sid Caesar. Let's see, even Spike Jones did a half-hour comedy special. But all the great comedians were on Saturday nights. And in those days, your parents ruled. They watched TV, and if you didn't like what they didn't like, too bad. Go to your room and draw something. But so they were all on, and that's how I got hooked. I watched nothing but comedians because my father was he loved all of them. And that's how I got hooked. Jackie Gleason, of course, as you know, was my absolute favorite. And so that's how it got started. That's how it got started.
Well, I remember the exact one point to where I wanted to get it. I wanted to perform.
Yeah.
And that was watching the old Steve Allen Tonight Show.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God, yes.
When he had Irwin Corey on.
Yeah, Irwin Corey.
Irwin Corey running through the audience with all the pages chasing him was the most hysterical thing I've ever seen in my life.
Well, we can't leave out Milton Berle. I forgot Milton Berle.
Oh, Milton Berle.
Yeah. That's how it got started. Watching TV on a Saturday night, all the great comics were on with my parents. And that's how it started. And then years later, I added to the list. Laurel and Hardy. As a matter of fact, as I'm speaking to you, all my letters from Stan are right here. I've got them in a big glass frame, and they're right here. Yeah, they're right here. And Laurel and Hardy, of course, and then Abbott and Costello, my God. But all through the 50s and the 60s and some of the 70s, too. Boy, you had them all. Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello, the Three Stooges, even Olsen and Johnson. People don't remember them, but, so you couldn't help but to get hooked, at least me. And you want to know how Looney Skip Rooney got started? I can tell you that if you want to know.
Yeah, let's hear that one.
Well, that was, I love slapstick. And I guess I got started, like Jerry Lewis did. Jerry Lewis did a lip sync act.
Right.
And that's how Looney Skip Rooney started. But I started lip syncing all the Spike Jones stuff. I bought all the albums and timed it all out. And Looney Skip Rooney was originally a lip sync act, like Jerry Lewis started out. And the first show that I ever did was Wonderama. That was the first one I ever did, doing Spike Jones. And they had this weird setup on Wonderama. In other words, if nobody knew who you were, but they wanted you on, which was my thing at the time. You were the opening act for the kids in the studio. Okay, you could do a dog act, or you're a magician, or a singer, or, you know, somebody like Floyd that played the piano. You were the opening act. So they would get the kids in the studio at Channel 5, you know, to tape Wonderama, and you were the act that had to warm them up. And if you bombed, you know, you didn't get on the show. It was as simple as that. So this is what they tell me, and I said, well, you see, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have props on a table or something, you know, below my waist, so I can grab them and pull them up to the camera and use them, you know. And they were more than accommodating. You know, they got the camera angle and this and that. And the kids watched you on the monitor, you know.
Right.
So I said, here, go. And it went over. The kids were laughing. I was, you know, banging my teeth and hitting myself in the side of the head with a rubber hammer and chickens and all this stuff. And they were laughing like crazy, and I got on the show. Yeah.
And that's all it takes is one time in front of an audience where you're getting that kind of reaction, and that's it, you're hooked.
Oh, yeah. Well, I did a lot of school plays, too. I mean, I was a real ham. I did all the school plays in grammar school. I went to Deerfield School in Mountainside. Mountainside, New Jersey is my hometown. And did a lot of shows, and especially in high school. We were always doing variety shows and, you know, the school plays. So I was like in every one of, you know, I was lucky that I graduated, because with all the rehearsal time they did for all this stuff, I was never in the class. I was always on stage rehearsing something. And, you know, we did yeah.
I think we're all in that boat.
Oh, without a doubt. But my inspirations were definitely Laurel and Hardy. Definitely. To me, they were the best. And I used to love it. One of my favorite bits on the Floyd Show was when you and Floyd did Laurel and Hardy. Oh, I love that.
Well,
you know,
that was our love given to the two of them, even though they could never see it. But you know,
yeah.
So
well, I used to like Floyd when he'd say, "You big bloke." You know, he tried to do you know, Stan's accent, you know, and it was funny. You did Hardy pretty well too, but no, Laurel and Hardy #1 without a doubt. Next, I would have to say would be Gleason. Gleason was magic. There was no two ways about it. You watch that's why the Honeymooners, they're still on television after all these years, 50 years, 75 years, whatever it is.
And there's only 26 of them that exist.
Exactly. And I remember when they released the early ones to television, you know, they were pretty rough. You know, the characters hadn't been established yet, you know.
Right.
Gleason was always yelling. You know, they hadn't calmed him down as of yet, but they were still worth watching. So I was like, next, without a doubt, Soupy Sales was definitely, he was an inspiration. And you want to know the reason why Soupy was so popular, and still is? I still get so many conversations with people about him, how they remember him and us. We are now where he was. When we were younger, you know, and he was off television, you go see him in a club or something.
Right.
Our generation grew up on Soupy. This generation, with now, all professionals, lawyers and doctors, whatever, they grew up with us. So we're in the position now, I used to watch you guys all the time, you know, when I was in college, and, you know, what's Floyd really like, and what's Scott really like, what about Neto? They asked about everybody. And it's like you do a show like we did, and it's like they never forget it. You know, they remember their childhood, their high school years, and, you know, that's the way, you know, I was with Soupy. And I don't know whether you ever saw his nightclub act, but he did this bit. It actually brought tears to my eyes, and a lot of people in the audience. I used to go see him at Rascals. He was at Rascals all the time in West Orange.
Right.
Yeah, and I would go see him, you know, and he'd do his stand-up. He was a great stand-up comic. For anybody who never saw his stand-up act, you really missed it. He was a very fine stand-up artist, very funny. And he used to get through all of his things, you know, like that, and he used to, all of a sudden he would say, you know, I used to do this TV show. Well, the place would go hysterical. People yelling and screaming, Pookie, White Bang, you know, all the characters that he did on the show. And then before he went in to talk about it, he would always say, he said, my kids are here. My kids are here.
Yeah.
Look how good you all turned out. Well, that, for some reason, including me, you know, and brought to, boy, there were a lot of people in the audience, including with tears in their eyes. You know, they remember how good his show was, you know, and I don't know. So, but he was certainly an inspiration, you know, and he had a lot of charm. I remember that. In addition to, you know, the comedy bits that he did on the show, which were great, you know, he had a lot of charm. He just very entertaining.
He was one heck of a nice guy too.
He was a nice guy, and he well, I never told Floyd this. I can tell you this. I would write a bit. You know, say the phones are always ringing. You know, Looney skip Rooney's need for greed. You know, whatever it was.
Right.
I didn't write for Hula Hannah because Floyd would tell me what he wanted for that. He would say, "Well, you know, I need props. You're going to need one pie. You're going to need a pineapple, you know, and tassels, whatever." So I never wrote for Hula Hannah, but this thing. So, and I would get stuck. I would, you know, because we had no writers, as you well know, and you know, so I would come up with the need for greed game, and I'd come up with some, you know, great bits with props, but I couldn't come up with the finish, you know. So I'm thinking about it. That's no good. So I would, now don't tell Floyd this. Well, he's going to hear this anyway. So I would call Soupy, okay? And he said, "What are you going to do? What is it?" You know how he talks. What are you going to do? What's the thing you're going to do? And I told him, I said, "Soup," I got the body of this bit, but I can't come up with a funny punchline. Do you know? He said, "Call me back in 15 minutes." I would call him up. He'd give me the end of the bit.
Well, a lot of people don't know that Floyd and I, with a lot of the sketches we did with, you know, like the Indians, Chief Wacky Wig, that kind of stuff.
Yes.
He'd have a bit, and we'd be taping the radio show here in the studio, and he'd say, "I've got this." A record would be playing, it'd be, you know, some opera record, and he'd say, "Look, I've got this bit, but I don't have an ending," and he'd tell me the bit. And he'd look at me, and I say, "Next record." And we'd go into the next record, and at that time, I'd come up with an idea, and he'd say, "Yeah, that's right. That's what we should do."
Yeah. So,
sometimes it just takes another eye or another ear to come up with the right twig to stick in there and make it work.
Yeah.
So,
well, I wasn't that clever. I'd be hanging around for like 45 minutes to an hour, you know, trying to come up with a punchline for a bit that I was working on, and I called Soupy, and he was more than cooperative, and he said, "Call me back in 15 minutes," and he would, and I'd call him back, and he would come up with the ending, you know. But he was funny. He said, "I don't want any credit for it. You know, don't mention." You know, I said, "No, so I can't tell Floyd. He'll kill me." So there was not all the time. You know, maybe 2-3 times, but he was more than helpful, and he was a great guy, and he watched us. He liked the show. You know?
I know he did.
Yeah. And Floyd used to hang around with him. They would go to dinner together at I can't think of it now. The club for the comedians in New York.
The Friars Club.
Friars Club. That's right. The Friars Club. Yeah, they got towards the end of Soupy's life. They got kind of friendly, which is good. Well, you know, which is good.
Soupy came and saw us several times at the Bottom Line.
I know.
You know.
I know. I get nervous as hell because I don't know whether you remember that, but everywhere we did the live show, Muggsy would always take a peek through the curtain to see how many people were out there. And Muggsy would come to me and said, "Soupy's out there. Soupy Sales is out there," you know. And, oh, man, I get nervous. Oh, my God, you know. But, you know, I went out there and did it, like all performers are supposed to do. But, he was more than...
He sat there and laughed right along with everybody else, too.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, that was his kind of comedy. Yeah.
Well,
I remember one time...
Go ahead.
One time I went to see him at the Rascals, and, you know, they always let me back after the show to see him. And we started talking about material and this and that. And he said to me, "I don't care, you know, what bit you steal from me, but don't do the dogs. That was verboten." He told me that. "Don't do the dogs. That's mine." And I said, "Soup, I wouldn't touch it." No, we won't do that, you know. every once in a while Muggsy would, busting me. He'd go, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, we never. I mean, I sure I lifted material from him. I mean, he did a lot of great stuff, you know. And like you and I know, we had no writers. I mean, it was all on your shoulders. So.
Well, Skip, it's been great talking to you about this. Hang on around after I do the little close here, and we'll talk a little more on the phone. But
okay, well, I just want to say one thing, and then you can close the show. First of all, I want to thank you for having me on.
Oh, we'll do it again.
Yes, but it was always a pleasure, you know, working with you. I want to just tell the audience that's listening now how much we enjoyed doing the Uncle Floyd Show. I think Scott mentioned it earlier, but we all had a ball, and there was no ego trips from anybody. Everybody did what they had to do. Oh yeah, sure, you had creative differences. Everybody would get a little annoyed at something. You know, we had like 5 or 6 guys in the studio, including the star, Floyd. So, you know, there'd be friction now and then, but there was no where people would walk off the show, I'm not coming back, none of that.
No, never happened. I told you,
never happened. We all worked for one thing, and that was the success of the show. And I remember the last time I saw Floyd, you know, we talked about that. I said, you know, it was your show, but we all rooted for everybody on there. He said, you know how Floyd talks. I know that. I had a good time, too. All right, that's all I had to say, Scott. And, you know, I do appreciate you having me on here. It's been a while.
Right.
It's been a while. So I do appreciate it.
Well, stay on the phone. I'm going to do the close. And for you walking off, I'll give you this.
Okay. And here's the address so you can join the fun. Okay.
That's exactly what I was going to do.
Okay.
All right, hang on. I'll be right back with you. And now, if you have any questions you want to send in, just send them into ufpodcast@sge-inc.com. That's ufpodcast@sge-inc.com. I'm Scott Gordon, and I'm grateful that you came and listened to this. Join us on Tuesday night, as Floyd says, every week at 8. On Tuesday, we have a date on stageit.com. If you want to see that, just go to theunclefloydshow.tv. That's theunclefloydshow.tv. It'll take you right there, and you can watch some of the clips from the old show and see Skip and see me and Muggsy and all the other guys. And we'll see you again next week. We're going to have another podcast, and this is Scott Gordon saying, see you then.
This program was produced in the studios of Scott Gordon Enterprises, Incorporated in Paramus, New Jersey.